just recorded an almost entire video about Larry Laudan, who was a philosopher, who is a philosopher of science, but now he's doing philosophy of law and the juristic system. And this is a special, people, figures, thinkers with Libra placements for the Libra month. And he has Sun in Libra. And I'll just stop feeling sorry for myself for having episode. Thank you, Neptune Mercury opposition, and get to work. So, who was Larry Laudan and what was his contribution? Larry Laudan he's a philosopher of science. Now he's doing philosophy of law, and he transitioned to that around 96. Haven't looked into the ZR. That would be another maybe future episode. His latest contribution to philosophy of science in the 90s was that there are the conservatives in science, that is the scientists or the researchers who require very rigorous methods, or they require some very rigorous standards for something to be considered empirical evidence. Okay? So this is the conservative. And then we have the innovative. So the innovative scientists are the ones who do not require such rigorous empirical evidence for something to be considered empirical. So, for example, um, at the frontier of applied science, okay, if you take a look at what would we try with treating patients that are in life risk versus what would we try, or chronic ailment life risk, versus what would we try with, a patient that has a cold. So we are a lot more rigorous on what would we try on a healthy person than what would we try on a person who is on the verge of death. We will try, anything to save their lives in terms of ethics, right? And so we need innovation in science. We need people who are more relaxed about what they consider empirical data, or what they consider sciency in the world, because they are thinkers, they are philosophizers, they come up with theories, they come up with guesses, and then a technology develops that allows us to observe what we previously could not observe, and now we can refute the theory. Supposedly, I think, refutability is not really existing. Or we can further support the theory. We can have more rigorous standards for empiricism for a phenomenon that we have the technology to observe. Okay? So that was his 90s contribution to science. He went through a lot of phases in his scientific thought and his theories about philosophy of science. He was exploring even more intuitive approaches to science, like literally the word intuitive approaches to science. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't know that there were intuitive approaches to science, that it was not just always, oh, what is the method? What is the rigorous method? What is, um, the structure-based method to science, and they were looking for the solutions in places that were sometimes true and sometimes not. So this new contribution, where we have the innovators, or we have the people who are more relaxed about what they call sciencey, okay? And we have the people who need very rigorous standards for empiricism. And in between, we have technology that develops. So technology can allow innovative science to become science that is accepted by the conservative. And so we have less controversy around things, around phenomena that we can observe and and make our minds about. Okay, before you could observe photons and waves, then you would have certain theories or you would have certain ideas. But then when you were able to observe light, then you're seeing very weird phenomena. Then now you need to explain them. Um, but that was not the question before the technology to observe the phenomena developed. Now, I'm going to touch at his natal chart. So his ascendant is in Capricorn. It means he is ruled by Saturn. His Saturn is in the fifth house, in Taurus. Venus ruled conjuncting Uranus. So Saturn, structure, the history of something, karma accumulating, studying long-term processes. Okay, the history of scientific revolutions. Uranus, sciencey stuff, claircognizance, the ability to just know something, to intuit a knowledge, the ability to intuit a knowledge. This is Uranus. Technology, okay, development of technology and something revolutionary. So we have these two conjunct, and it is so beautiful. Okay, the structure of the revolutions in science. How does it happen? So studying the structure of how science evolves. And the solution that he found had to do with technology. Okay, there are the innovative, Uranus, the conservatives, Saturn, and it's in a Venus ruled sign, so we know we're going to find the common ground between them. We're going to find the win-win between them. We're going to find an opinion, a worldview that says we need both. Okay, we need both. And the solution is technology. The solution is, okay, we cannot observe a phenomena, then we have a technology, now we can observe a phenomena and become more conservative, and what was a guess in the air, what was pseudoscience now becomes scientific or not. Okay, one of the problems with people who don't quite understand how astrology affects, or what do we study in astrology, that is the relations and how something affects us, is like, oh, but now we can observe the stars. Now we can observe the star. We know that we're not the center of the universe, but astrology looks at it like that, and it is a great, misunderstanding of of what astrology is about, that can make for a very reasonable person to think, okay, now astrology is probably being refuted because now we observe the constellations and we observe, that many things change since, and so on and so forth, and they don't understand that astrology actually accounts for that data. And this is not a strong enough an argument to refute astrology. In general, refuting applied science is not as simple, but this is my thesis. This is not Larry Laudan. So his greatest contribution had to do with basically settling both innovation in science, or what people might even call pseudoscience, and if you think he was a supportive of astrology, think again. No, he didn't reach all the way there. At least from what the things that I read, and I read quite some, but that was a couple of years ago. And he wanted to balance, the innovation in science, the intuition in science, what we would call clear cognizance, and the structure, the rigorous methods, the conservative science, the things we can all accept and agree upon. Okay, so this is how a scientific theory becomes well established. That is what he studied, that is what he explained in his 90s contribution. So the ruler of Saturn and Uranus is Venus. She is in the 12th house, trining the moon in Virgo in the 9th. Okay, so we have this, and if you remember my Spirit of Matter episodes, I always look at the 12th house, the 9th house, the 11th, and the 3rd. And here, the ruler of the 3rd house is in the sixth house, so he's going to be working in something that he does daily, that he looks at daily. There is a beautiful connection that you'd see with a lot of thinkers between the third and the ninth house. The fifth, I'm sorry, the fifth and the ninth house. The fifth and the ninth house basically tell us that his worldview, his teaching, his academic studies was something that was pleasurable to him. It was like something almost libidinal. If you read him, and Mercury there, the ruler of the ninth house, is in the 11th. So his teachings are public. They are published. He is known. He is acknowledged. He gets the exposure for his worldview, for his academic studies. Okay, he is a professor. He is a teacher, and this Mercury is in Scorpio. And Scorpio, yeah, Scorpio. When you hear a Scorpio talks about their theories, not a Scorpio talks. A Scorpio Mercury the theories. It's the ability to penetrate into the depth of something, and also here it also makes like this trying to not no, this cannot be a trine. It's the inconjunct. Of course, I knew it cannot be a trine. The inconjunct to Mars in Aries. So Mars in Aries, impulsive, gusto, and if you read Larry Laudan, oh my gosh, it's like you know there is something so down to earth, and there's something so passionately argumentative, and this is so funny and so lovely because we are in the Sun in Libra, and this is Sun in Libra series, and Sun in Libra people or placements in Libra people, and I'm gonna touch on that Sun in Libra. But it is so funny when you think about the myriad of contradictions, okay? That Venus ruling his fifth house, and basically the solution, the creative solution um, that we can see in the fifth, that Venus is kind of freedom seeking, and it's in the 12th house, but she's also ruling that pleasure play. So it's finding a common ground, finding a win-win, finding balanced views. But then that Mercury is communicating those. It's like trying to communicate your peace agreement, but coming off as a person with plenty of gusto and very argumentative. So that's more or less his style, which is fascinating. We have that again, the Pluto Mercury, which again, a very penetrative mind, penetrative insights, but also hard-headed. Okay, also a person that when they express, they're very passionate about how they express their opinion. That can alienate people, but it's also a kind of person, it's the kind of partner you would really enjoy to have a good argument with. Very passionate argument, okay? Very passionate speaker. So, Rahu in his ninth house. Rahu, from the evolutionary perspective, means this is what the soul has not done. This is something new to him. So it's something that you crave to develop, but you also you try to go about it in a kind of way. It takes a while until you make it. And Rahu is ruled here by Mercury, so trying time and time again to have a worldview, to have a thesis, to have a theory that he can stand for in his cosmology, in his worldview, in his philosophy. So there is with Mercury, it's something compartmentalizing things, categorizing things, and indeed the solution eventually was there are this group, there is that group, and what allows them to communicate eventually, the development of technology. Okay, so technology is something that allows the innovators to communicate their theories to the conservatives and be well received and accepted. And then we have Neptune in the ninth house. So Neptune in the ninth house basically means that the whole concept of worldview is something that he had to surrender. It would change. He would like lose his faith in something and then believe in another thing. There can be a fog or confusion about what is the belief, and for a while he was actually looking into an intuitive way to make science. So intuitive science, basically intuitive science, literally intuitive science, and that's very Neptune, okay? And that Neptune trine Uranus and Saturn there is a very interesting configuration, okay, for when sciencey things are also spiritual things, are also intuitive things. The structure is also intuitive. This connection that now people are not aware of. They just think, oh, science is that thing that, they quote Weber, like, they learned one sentence in philosophy of science in every, faculty, that like, oh, you need to refute the theory, you need to refute the theory. You cannot refute the theory. This is applied science. It's very difficult to refute a theory. You can only support the theory more and more, or think, okay, according to that, this is less likely. And then something that is more supported just becomes a thing, but you can't really refute the theory. Never mind. This is already my thesis, not Laudan's. So, um, should I should I should spirit of matter my philosophy as well. Sun in Libra. Now it's an interesting story. When Laudan, in the late Laudan, was in the library, he met the person from the law department, and he loved to have a good argument. So he asked him a question, something to do with evidence. I don't remember, around law, and that lawyer had a not satisfactory answer. Sort of like, how do they decide on the evidence in court or whatnot? And for Larry Laudan, this good argument was the beginning of him moving to an absolutely new domain, and that is where he teaches now in Austin. I believe he still does, and that is philosophy of juristics. And he wrote a whole book about evidence-based. When you have science-based and evidence-based, is not the same. Okay, in medicine, science-based medicine and evidence-based medicine are actually rivalries. Okay, rivalries, epistemic standards. Um, so it's not intuitive. So he wrote a whole book about evidence-based law system, and the difficulties to establish one, and the gap, and how to have realistic expectations about law. Okay, his midheaven is in Libra, and what do we say about Libra in the 10th house? A person who is known for something to do, either juristics or politics or balancing things or aesthetics. In this case, eventually juristics. I assume that if I say the name Larry Laudan, oh, the person who wrote, the evidence-based thing about juristics, um, and not, oh, it was a known philosopher of science and so and so. Is probably more known for his late work and where he teaches now than what he did all his life. But he is known for people who are philosophy of science geeks, or maybe known for philosophy of science geeks. Sun in Libra, okay? What his career is eventually is the philosophy of, and we have, philosophy, that beautiful trine to Jupiter philosophy, ruling the 3rd house of what we write about daily. In Gemini, the blabbering thing, talking. He works in talking. Okay, he's a lecturer and a publicist. And Jupiter is also our higher philosophy. So we have this interesting connection, okay, with Jupiter trining the sun. So he's shining in his work, and his work is to teach about philosophies of law, or the philosophical aspect of juristics in the juristics department. This is what he's known for. This is where his life mission is. And this happened to the late Larry Laudan, okay? His book, I think, on the evidence-based heuristics was written in 1996, if I'm not mistaken. So this was already the late Larry Laudan. So after he established his worldview and went through the trials and tribulations to have a cosmology, he delved into law, and he was competent enough to deal with heuristics and philosophy of heuristics with all the tools that he had acquired throughout his life, being philosopher of science, being a thinker about scientific revolutions and whatnot. Um, mm, 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 mm. Okay, Venus in the 12th. Venus in the 12th. I'm not gonna look into the Venus Pluto thingy because this is 8th house and 12th house, and that is. Yes, the Sun is also ruling the 8th house, and 8th house can be commonwealth. So it can, heuristics often deal with, what happened when a couple divorces, what happened with this corporation, what happens, there's often money involved in the juristic process. And so, yeah, he's the Pluto in Leo generation, with Chiron in Leo, Chiron in the 8th house. I don't feel like it matters to try to delineate that personally. I don't know. Yes, there is a Venus Pluto hard aspect there, and Venus is isolated. Okay, Venus is isolated, um, and Venus is in Sagittarius, so Sagittarius, mutable fire sign, freedom, but also it is ruled by Jupiter. Where is Jupiter? Again, in the 6th house. So this beautiful connection between what we download from other worlds, the 12th house, okay, and the ruler of that 12th house in the 6th house, the service, both our employees, but also the service we give to people. True, also our physical health, also our pets, but also how we are service of humanity. This is the 6th house. Okay, so we can get paid for this, the 2nd house, our skills, which is ruled by both Saturn and Uranus. I do take into account modern rulers. So yeah. And we can make money both in what is our skill and also how are we of service to others. Okay. When we are good at being of service to others, then we can make wealth in an ethical way. So Venus here in the 12th means that what he downloads from other worlds, in terms of his philosophy, and there are many significations to that isolation, blah blah blah. What he downloads are actually kind of a diplomacy around something philosophical. How do we establish, a diplomatic relations between the conservative and the innovators? How do we establish good discourse between people who do what some people consider pseudoscience to what people consider as pure science? Because applied science cannot be born without pure science, and pure science cannot be advanced without pseudoscience, okay? Without what we don't think of, we don't, okay? And so the linking, like the link here we see is technology. If we have, and in many cases, the more conservative people will say, well, I will believe you, I will take you seriously when I will be able to observe the phenomena. Show me that, or show me this, show me that. Now you're talking in the air, you're talking, and when you have developing technologies, now you can show data. Now you can show. Of course, there are many complications to that, and engineering, and how do we interpret data, and I know, okay, but that was the core of what he believed allows innovative theories, intuitive theories, half-baked theories uh, become accepted in the discourse. That's technology. Uh, mm, 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 mm. Anything more to say about this chart? Yeah. No, I think that we got it, and I think being exposed to thinkers like Laudan, being exposed to philosophy of science, being exposed to many theories about how the scientific endeavor advances, opens your mind. You will not look at any sort of, discourse about the democration question of science or what is sciency, or people that say, they're not scientific, they're not this, they're just blabbering. You will never look at it the same. Okay? You will never look at, why don't we just believe scientists? Why are we so stupid that we don't believe scientists to study this for blah, blah, blah? We will never look at it the same. Because we do need both the people who come up with an idea and don't know how they know, and the people who require for, more rigorous standards. We do need both in the discourse. We do need both tradition and innovation. Okay? We do need both more experimental approaches and more tried and true approaches. We can't actually have a fertile scientific discourse without being aware of the many views to philosophy of science, um, without being aware of the many views to scientific thought. So this is actually a thinker who is both passionate and interesting, and has a point to say, and attempts to find to bridge between the dichotomy of, if you don't do that and that and that and that rigorous methods, you're not a scientist, and just having theories flying in the air because I received it in channeling. This is what I go by, and and it can be good as experiment, but it's not sufficient for other things. Um, so yeah, but then there are times where you do rely on your intuition. Okay, there are many times where relying on intuition actually saved your life. Um, and no sciencey thing could have done this for you. You had to listen to your body, or listen to your this, or listen to that inner voice, or just know something, and that was proved to be more useful. And again, applied science, what we actually practice. Um, so, yes. This is also something that bridges pure science and applied science, because again, applied science tend to be, has to be, at least in the beginning, more experimental. Um, mm, mm, mm. Okay, we got it. Now, now comes that, where did I go? No. Now comes the interesting part where I try to press something and go and use all of my screens, and there it is. There it is. I'm Tali on Twitter, Shelly Youngblood on Instagram. I do readings. And yeah, it has been a while since I did Spirit of Matter, so I'll see you in my next weird episode. Bye.